I opened the door and saw her standing there, eyes red from crying, a suitcase in one hand and a child clinging to the other. What I didn't know then was that by letting her in, I was slowly locking myself out of my own life. I remember the exact hour she moved back into this house. It was February. Cold. The kind of gray morning that feels like nothing good can come of it. My hands trembled as I held the door open. My daughter, Ellen, barely looked at me when she entered. She was too wrapped up in her own storm, dragging behind her little Toby, who couldn't have been more than 6, his eyes too tired for a boy that age. "This is temporary," she said flatly, not quite looking at me, her voice clipped. "Just until I figure things out." I nodded, too eager to be needed again. It had been years since anyone needed me for anything. My husband Harold passed 8 years ago, and ever since, this old house had been too big, too quiet. I spent most days in the kitchen, humming old tunes and talking to pictures, praying for a knock on the door that never came. Until she did. Ellen hadn't visited often since her marriage. She was always too busy, juggling work, motherhood, and that cold man she called her husband. So when she came back to me, hurt and heartbroken, I wanted nothing more than to shelter her, to be her mother again. I made up the guest room with fresh sheets and fluffed pillows that had long gone flat. I cooked her favorite meals, meatloaf with extra onions, mashed potatoes with gravy, peach cobbler with real cinnamon. She barely ate, but I told myself it was just the stress. The first week was hard. She stayed in bed most days, while Toby sat cross-legged in front of the TV. I started taking care of him, slipping back into my grandmother role like I'd never left it. Morning pancakes, baths with toys, homework, though Ellen rarely asked if it got done. By the second month, she was out of bed. By the third, she was rearranging furniture. "It's just too dark in here," she said one day, sliding my old coffee table, Harold's coffee table, out of the living room. "Let's brighten it up a bit." She threw out the curtains I'd sewn by hand, packed up the figurines Harold brought me from Vienna, moved my recliner out of its corner. "It's just stuff, Mom," she said. But it wasn't. It was mine. And it was him. Still, I didn't stop her. I told myself she needed control. A fresh start. Maybe if I gave her the space, she'd find her balance. Maybe she'd find me. Instead, the house started to feel less like mine and more like a place I was renting, without paying rent. One evening in April, I walked into the kitchen and found her there standing in front of the pantry with a notebook. "What are you doing?" I asked gently. "Meal planning," she replied. "You're spending too much on groceries, and honestly, Mom, your sodium intake is off the charts." She'd gone through my bank statements, my doctor's notes, even the pill bottles I kept on the counter. I was too stunned to speak. She took that as permission to keep going. That night, she cooked quinoa and steamed vegetables. No salt, no butter. Toby cried through dinner. I couldn't even blame him. In May, she told me we needed to downsize. "This house is too much for you," she said over tea. "I've already looked at a few condos nearby. Something safer, simpler." "I'm not leaving my home," I said, my voice shaking. She blinked. "I didn't say today. I said we'd look." But we didn't look. She did. She came home with printouts, called realtors, told the neighbors we might be moving. Toby started calling my bedroom Grandma's little room, like it was a guest wing in a hotel she owned. 6 months. That's how long it took for her to start calling my house our house. And I let her. Every week, a new decision was made without me. A new rule. No sugar after 6 p.m. No TV during meals. No late phone calls to those gossiping friends. I was being erased. With a smile and a clipboard, I started sleeping later, just to avoid breakfast lectures. I started sneaking cookies into the laundry room. I started talking to Harold's picture again, only now, I was crying. She wasn't cruel. Not exactly. But she was firm, controlling, always helping, always managing, like I was a liability in my own skin. I tried to talk to her one night, sitting on the porch swing that still squeaked the way it did when Harold pushed it. "Ellen," I said, "I appreciate everything you're doing, but I feel like I'm not living in my own house anymore." She sighed, rubbed her temples. "Mom, I'm trying to keep things running. You should be grateful. Grateful for being a ghost in my own home." That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked into the kitchen around 2 a.m. and heard her voice through the vent, talking on the phone. "She's slipping," she said. "I'm honestly worried she can't manage anymore. Maybe I'll talk to someone about guardianship." Guardianship. As if I was no longer a person. As if I was a problem. I sank to the floor, my heart pounding. Had I really become so invisible? So easily taken? That night changed something in me. I stopped trying to please her. I started watching. Listening. Noticing how often she'd take phone calls in hushed tones. How she'd sign papers without showing me. How my checkbooks suddenly had entries I didn't remember making. One afternoon, I walked into the bank myself. Just to check. And that's when I saw it. My savings. Gone. Transferred to an E. Simmons, her married name. I sat there in the bank, staring at the screen, my heart turning to ash. She had taken over everything. My home. My money. My name. And I had let her. I left the bank without remembering how I got home. The world outside moved, but I didn't see it. I didn't feel the summer breeze, didn't hear the birds in the oak trees above. All I felt was a heavy, slow-burning ache in my chest, like someone had reached in and pulled something out without asking. That night, I sat at the kitchen table in the dark, the bank receipt still clutched in my hand. Ellen walked in, phone to her ear, laughing about something probably with that new wellness coach she hired to keep me active. She paused when she saw me. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" she asked, flipping the light switch. I didn't answer. I just looked at her. I wanted to scream, to demand, to grab her shoulders and shake her until the daughter I raised came back. But all I could do was ask, quietly, why? Her smile faltered. Why what? You emptied my savings, Ellen. Her eyes widened for half a second, just long enough for me to know it wasn't a mistake. Then she straightened, calm and practiced. I didn't empty anything, she said coolly. I transferred it into a joint account. For safekeeping. You're vulnerable to scams, Mom. That word again. Vulnerable. Like I was a cracked vase someone was keeping on a shelf just until it finally gave way and shattered. I didn't ask you to do that, I whispered. No, she said, her tone sharpening. But I had to. You're not making sound decisions anymore. You think peanut brittle is dinner. You forget to lock the front door. You talk to Dad's picture like he's going to answer. Tears welled in my eyes. Because I'm lonely. Because you don't talk to me anymore. She crossed her arms. You're being dramatic. Dramatic. After everything. She turned away. I'm done with this conversation. I sat there for a long time after she left the room, staring at the worn grain of the kitchen table Harold built for me 40 years ago. It was still solid. Still mine. But I wasn't sure I was anymore. The next morning, I woke up before dawn and packed a small bag. I didn't know where I was going, not really. Just that I couldn't sit still and let this continue. I tucked the bag in the back of my closet, hidden behind winter coats and photo albums. And I waited. I started keeping notes. Quiet ones, folded slips of paper I tucked into books Ellen never touched. I wrote down everything: bank statements, dates of strange calls, overheard conversations. It was all I had. My voice in ink. Ellen noticed the shift. She called it moodiness. Told Toby I was just tired lately. But I saw the glances she gave me, the way she began hovering more. Watching. She thought I was slipping. But I was waking up. One morning, while she was out on one of her self-care retreats, I snuck into her room. I didn't want to God, how I hated what I was doing, but I needed to know. Her desk drawer was locked. It only took me 5 minutes and a bobby pin to open it. I felt a guilty thrill, like a schoolgirl sneaking chocolate before dinner. Inside, I found a binder. Tidy, well organized. Labeled plan. Inside it were forms, legal documents. Power of attorney. Medical proxies. Sale listings for my home. And at the back, tucked between 2 folders, a handwritten budget for a new beginning. In her handwriting, she'd written, estimate, $250,000 from Mom's equity. Condo in Laguna. Toby private school. Yoga license renewal. Not a word about me. Not a word about what would happen to me. I felt sick. I left the binder where it was and went to the backyard. I sat on the bench Harold built me, under the lemon tree we planted when Ellen was 9. I looked at that tree, its branches bent from the weight of fruit, and I cried. How did we get here? How did she become this? That night, I called Linda. She was my neighbor 3 doors down. We used to go walking every Tuesday before my hip started acting up. She was one of the few people Ellen hadn't managed to push away. I told her everything. She listened. She didn't say, "Are you sure?" Or, "Maybe you misunderstood." She just said, "You're not crazy. And you're not alone." The next morning, she came over with her niece, Clary, an attorney. Young, sharp, quiet eyes. We met in my garden. Claire took one look at my notes, the copied bank records, the pictures I'd secretly taken of Ellen's binder, and said, "This is financial abuse. We can fight this." I didn't want to fight. I wanted my daughter back. But I knew that wasn't who was living with me anymore. The legal process moved slowly, quietly. Claire filed motions, froze my accounts, sent Ellen a letter through the attorney's office, warning her that any further transactions could be considered criminal. Ellen didn't come out of her room for a full day after she read it. Then she exploded. She burst into the kitchen, red-faced, fists clenched. "You think you can just turn on me?" she shouted. "After everything I've done for you?" "You did it for yourself," I said calmly. "You weren't helping me. You were erasing me. You needed erasing." That cut through me like glass. And she saw it. Her voice trembled. "You don't understand what it's like. To raise a kid alone. To have your life collapse." I was surviving. So was I. We stood in silence. And then she said it. "You're a bitter old woman who should have stayed quiet. You've always been weak. Dad knew it too." She turned on her heel and stormed off. I didn't follow. I didn't call after her. I just let the echo of those words hang in the air, like smoke from a fire that had already burned too long. 2 weeks later, she left. No goodbye, no letter, just gone. She took her things. She took Toby. But not before I knelt down in front of my grandson, held his little face in my hands, and whispered, "You are good. You are kind. And this isn't your fault." He nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. Then they were gone. And I was alone again. But not broken. Not this time. The house felt different after. Still, hollow in places. But also mine again. I reopened the curtains. Brought back my photos. Put Harold's chair where it belonged. I sat in it every morning, coffee in hand, looking out the window at the world I almost lost. Linda still visited. Claire helped me set up protections trusts, wills, safeguards. I joined a local seniors book club, started volunteering at the library, reading to children once a week. People saw me again, and I saw myself. One morning, months later, a letter came in the mail. No return address, just my name, handwritten in that same slanted script I used to correct on homework assignments. Inside, a single photo. Toby, smiling in front of a new school, holding a sign, "First day," and on the back, in shaky writing, "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know how far I'd gone. I hope one day you'll let me come home. Love, Ellen." I stared at it for a long time, and then I tucked it into the binder of notes. I kept the story of what happened, what nearly broke me, but didn't. Because sometimes, being a mother isn't about forgiving. Sometimes, it's about remembering who you are when the world forgets. Weeks passed, maybe months. I lost count. There was no one to make meals for, no TV blaring cartoons, no one to remind me to take my pills or scold me for a slice of cake. The silence was louder than any yelling Ellen ever did. And yet, I began to feel whole. I started walking again, just short ones down the block and back. The air tasted sweeter, somehow, the way it does after a long illness, when you first realize you can breathe again. Neighbors waved. I waved back. I even laughed. Linda and I went to church one Sunday. The pastor spoke about forgiveness, about letting go of bitterness. I sat stiffly through it, arms crossed. But when the choir sang, "It is well with my soul," my hands trembled. Because it wasn't well. Not yet. One evening, I sat on the porch as the sun dipped behind the maple trees. Orange and purple painted the sky, and for a moment, it was almost perfect. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. It was Ellen. Thinner, tired, but still my daughter. She didn't speak right away. She just stood at the base of the steps, her hands twisting the strap of her purse. Her eyes darted to the porch swing, then back to me. "I didn't know if you'd be home," she said quietly. "I live here," I replied. She nodded, eyes glistening. I needed to see you." A long silence stretched between us, filled with years and words unspoken. "I got help," she said. "Therapy. Divorce support group. I'm working part-time at a bookstore now." I didn't say anything. I didn't trust my voice. She stepped closer, then sat slowly on the swing. It creaked, just like it always did. "I was angry," she whispered. "But I think I was angrier at myself than at you. The sky darkened. I took from you. I controlled you. I told myself I was protecting you, but really, I didn't want to feel like a failure. You were the only thing I had left to manage." Still, I said nothing. Finally, she turned to me. "You don't have to forgive me. I don't even deserve to ask. But I wanted you to know I see it now. All of it. I looked at her, really looked. And for the first time in years, I saw not the woman who broke me, but the girl I once held in my arms after a nightmare. The one who used to hide behind my skirts. The one who used to love me so openly. I don't hate you, Ellen, I said softly. But I don't trust you. She nodded. A tear slid down her cheek. That's fair. We sat in silence again. The cicadas sang. The swing creaked. You can stay for dinner, I offered, not looking at her. Just dinner. A breath escaped her lips, relief. Maybe. Okay. She didn't smile. Neither did I. But we went inside. I reheated soup and cut slices of bread. She didn't try to take over the kitchen. And for that night, at least, we were just a mother and daughter again. The visits became weekly. Never overnight. Never for too long. Just long enough for stories about work, about Toby's school, about small moments. Each time, I saw pieces of her soften. Each time, I allowed myself to feel again. She brought me back my photos 1 week framed. She had reprinted them, fixed the scratches, mounted them neatly. I kept them safe, she said, even when I didn't deserve to. I didn't answer. I just ran my fingers over the glass of Harold's photo. One Sunday in October, Ellen came with Toby. He ran into my arms like nothing had changed, like no time had passed. Grandma, he yelled, burying his face in my sweater. Guess what? I got an A in math. I held him so tight, I thought my chest might crack. Ellen stood at the doorway, her eyes red but smiling. I thought he should see you, she said. He misses you. I invited them both in. We played board games. We made cocoa. Ellen didn't correct me once. When Toby asked for another cookie, she looked at me and said, If Grandma says yes, it's a yes. I blinked, surprised, and nodded. Yes, sweetheart. One more. Just one more. By Christmas, Ellen asked if she could spend the holiday here. Just the morning, she said. I'll bring the cinnamon rolls. Your way. With butter. I agreed. She came early, helped me decorate the small tree I bought. She didn't move a single ornament without asking. She even put Harold's star on top. I remember when he bought this, she said, her voice catching. So do I replied. He said it looked cheap, but magical. We both laughed. And then she asked me something I never expected. Would you consider co-signing on a small place for me? Just me and Toby. I can't qualify on my own yet, but I'm trying. I'd pay everything, I promise. I just need your name. I froze. Ellen saw the fear in my eyes. I understand if you say no, she said quickly. Truly. I wanted to ask you like an adult. Not take. Not sneak. Just ask. I looked at her, my heart twisting. Let me think, I said gently. She nodded, and she did not push. Later that night, after they left, I sat by the fire, Harold's blanket around my shoulders. I looked at our wedding photo, at the woman I used to be, at the woman I still was. Harold always believed in second chances, but he also believed in boundaries. That night, I wrote a list of pros and cons, of fears and hopes. It was a long list. But in the end, one thing stood out. People change, but only when they're allowed to fall. In January, I told her yes, but under legal terms. Claire would draft the paperwork. My name would be protected. I would not be held liable. The agreement would expire in 1 year, and she'd have to requalify by then. Ellen cried. Not from rejection. From the fact that I was still giving her something, even after everything. A year passed. She kept her word. She paid on time. She worked hard. She brought Toby to visit every other weekend. Sometimes she came alone. Sometimes she brought a pie. Once, she brought an apology card she made by hand. I know I may never deserve your full trust again, she wrote, but I will earn whatever pieces you are willing to give. I kept that card on my mantle, next to Harold's photo. I never moved. I kept the house, kept the lemon tree, the swing, the chipped plates, the old spice rack Ellen once called a bacteria farm. I kept everything, because it was mine. But I gave her back something too. Her place in my life. This time, not in control, not in charge, but beside me, where daughters belong. Spring came quietly, like it always did in this part of town. Soft pink buds on the trees. Lawnmowers humming like lazy bees. Children laughing down the street. And me, on the porch, watching it all, wrapped in my favorite cardigan, a cup of tea in my hand, and Toby's most recent drawing taped to the window behind May's version of Grandma's house, complete with lemon tree and crooked chimney. I'd never felt more at peace. Not because everything had been fixed, but because I'd finally let go of waiting for things to go back to what they used to be. Instead, I let them become what they could be. Ellen still came on Sundays. Not every Sunday, sometimes life got in the way, but when she did, it was always different now. She knocked. She asked if I needed anything. She brought dessert, sometimes flowers. She didn't rearrange furniture anymore. She didn't talk over me. She didn't treat me like a burden. One afternoon, as we sat under the lemon tree with iced tea and butter cookies, she said, "Do you remember when I was 12 and broke the window playing baseball in the living room?" I laughed. "Your father was furious. You swore it was Toby who did it, and he hadn't even been born yet." She grinned. "I still don't know how you didn't kill me." "Because I loved you," I said simply. Her smile faded, softened. She looked down at her hands. "I don't know how you still do." I reached across the table and placed my wrinkled fingers over hers. "Because you're still my child." She started to cry, then quiet tears that slipped down her cheeks and into her lap. I didn't stop her. I just squeezed her hand. Letting someone back into your heart doesn't mean erasing the past. It means deciding the past doesn't get the final word. That summer, Ellen bought a small house 15 minutes away. A modest 2-bedroom with a backyard and white shutters. She invited me to the housewarming, and I stood there, arms crossed, watching as she and Toby strung lights over the porch railing. She was different now. Calmer. Softer. She offered me a chair, the good one. She made sure I had a blanket. She introduced me to her new boss, a kind woman who ran the bookstore and called Ellen the most organized force of nature I've ever seen. I smiled, because once, I was afraid she'd never find herself again. Now, she was building something not on my back, not through control, but on her own feet. And for the first time, I believed she could stand. Later that evening, as the sun went down and fireflies began to blink in the bushes, Toby crawled onto my lap. "Grandma," he whispered, "remember when I used to live with you?" "I remember," I said, stroking his hair. "I miss it sometimes. The pancakes. The garden. You." Tears stung my eyes. "I miss it too, sweetheart. But now we have something new." He looked up at me. "Like what?" I kissed his forehead. "Like a forever that knows how to say sorry." The years passed faster than I expected. My knees hurt more in the mornings. My fingers stiffened in the cold. But my heart grew wider. Fuller. Linda passed the following winter. Quietly, in her sleep. I spoke at her service. I told the room how she saved my life without lifting a finger, just by believing me when no one else did. Claire moved to Chicago, but still called on my birthday. I planted marigolds under Harold's lemon tree. Ellen helped me set up a small vegetable garden. She came every Saturday to weed and water, and we'd really talk about everything. Sometimes about the past, sometimes about books, sometimes about nothing at all, and always with respect. It was never perfect. We had hard days. Days where old patterns tried to creep back. But we caught them, named them, chose differently. Toby grew taller than me. His voice deepened. He got into college, cried in my arms when he got his first rejection, then danced with me in the kitchen when the second letter came with a fat envelope. "I wouldn't have made it," he said one night before leaving for school, "without this house. Without you." I held his face, just like I did that day he left with Ellen all those years ago. "You'll always have a home here," I told him. "But now it's your turn to build one of your own." He nodded. "I will." And he did. One quiet morning just this spring, actually, I found a letter waiting for me on the porch. Ellen had written it. Not emailed. Not texted. Written. In the same handwriting I once helped her perfect on spelling tests and birthday cards. "Mom, there are 100 things I still want to say, but for once, I'll keep it simple. Thank you. Not for rescuing me when I broke things. Not for housing me when I was lost. But for seeing me when I didn't even deserve a glance. You taught me something I was too prideful to see. That love isn't about control. It's about giving someone the space to change. You gave me that. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to honor it. I love you, Ellen." I folded it gently, pressed it to my chest, and then placed it inside the same binder where I'd once kept my evidence. Not as proof of pain anymore, but as proof of healing. Now, as I sit under this lemon tree for what might be the 100th time, I can finally say it. Yes, she moved in after her divorce. Yes, she took over everything. Yes, she nearly broke me. But I'm still here. And so is she. And somehow, in all that taking, something unexpected happened. We found each other again, not in the roles we used to know, but in the people we've become. And that, more than anything, is enough.